Almost any language learning resource that you find for any language, a book, a class, just an online teacher, whatever, it's going to tell you that you need to develop a persona or some kind of identity, some sort of sense of belonging, a personality in the language that you're learning. You need to join in to the group of speakers at some point. So, have I become Korean? Let's talk about it. I want to start this video off with a brief jump scare warning. Do you remember this person? Oli London is this British man who decided to undergo a bunch of plastic surgery to change his race, his ethnic identity presentation to Korean. Specifically, he was obsessed with looking like Jimin, a member of BTS and a fellow Busan boy, shout out. When this person became a thing, it was much bigger news to me, I think, than most other people. Other than the fact that this person was just obviously an attention-seeking troll, a grifter, which is much clearer now to everybody, now that he's kind of at the end of the arc. You know, he's kind of milked the attention he can get out of every single group, and now he's focusing on his detractors. His ridiculous behavior, while being a meme, a silly meme to most people, really made me anxious. You see, I am an immigrant here in Korea, really. I moved here to work, but I started my life here. I've actually spent my entire adult life here. I speak the language, I participate in the culture, I have relationships entirely in the Korean language, I work here. Every part of my life, basically, is here in Korea. Two different things about what Oli London was doing, a couple years ago, really freaked me out, really made me anxious. First, this goofy goober of a person was in some way kind of serving as an avatar for a hypothetical, multi-racial, multicultural future for Korea for a lot of people. Second, it made me wonder if my attempts at assimilation and integration into Korean society, in order to more accurately use the language and connect with people on a human level, were in some way equally as grotesque and futile as what he was doing. So let's take a second here to talk about what it means to be Korean to the average Korean person on the street. Before the 1900s, I think this question was probably a lot more difficult to answer clearly. The Korean peninsula has seen a lot of different political organizations. It's been split into multiple different countries that spoke different languages. Sometimes it has assimilated forcibly nomadic groups into the population through royal decree. There are even a handful of clans in Korea who living people can trace their roots to, that were founded by foreigners from places as far away as like Persia. But in the early 1900s, the turn of the century time, Japan's brutal colonization of the Korean peninsula also imported an idea called 민족주의. Now, in English, this idea often gets translated to nationalism, but I think that's kind of reductive. If you look at the Hanja, I think it's better to translate this to something more like racial consciousness. Anyway, this idea of 민족주의 served and still serves in a lot of ways. Like, people still learn about this in school and use these words when they talk about stuff as a foundational principle of the development of the modern Korean state. You could think of it as an idea that the Korean government does not see itself as the stewards of this land and the people inside of it, but they see themselves as a government for and of the Korean people, no matter where they are. In some ways, it's similar to Israel, which provides immigration opportunities and citizenship to people with Jewish heritage from pretty much anywhere in the world. Off the top of my head, I can think of two different ways that this manifests itself in a legal sense right now. One, Korean law applies to Korean citizens no matter where they are. So if a Korean citizen were to travel to another country where, like, drugs or something are legal, they're still in violation of Korean law, even though they're not inside Korea. The laws of Korea apply to Korean people. Another way you can see this right now is starting in the early 2000s, Korea started inviting like tons of people with Korean ethnic heritage from places like China, Russia, North and South America, etc., to come back to Korea with essentially permanent residency visas. Basically just, you can come in and do what you want to do. So in a lot of ways, I think that to most Koreans, the simplest definition of a Korean person is someone with fully Korean blood, whatever that actually means. I think that's the baseline assumption of most Korean people who admittedly are probably not thinking about this that often. But some evidence for this is the fact that, they've got special words for Koreans from different places and for Koreans of mixed ethnicity, but everyone else is just called 외국인. It might be a little hard to wrap your head around if you're from like a more diverse country or a multiracial society or a settler country or one of the, more diverse Western European countries or whatever. Now, that's all kind of abstract. Oli London did not and does not know any of this. Oli London doesn't really know anything about Korea or Korean people or any of that kind of stuff at all. He did not become Korean. His entirely aesthetic approach to becoming Korean was not it. What about me, though? Have I become Korean? Well, like with anything that I become curious about, I immediately dove right in. I started searching online. I started talking to my friends and asking people around me, relevant people around me, what they thought about my thoughts and the idea itself. What I found from all of my Korean friends when I asked them this question was an initial, yes, you are. Because I think to them, I exist. I exist within their Korean-speaking universe. I'm not some foreigner they can't communicate with. I'm not living outside of the Korean social hierarchy or anything like that. I am someone that can be communicated with. I'm accessible, and they know what's going on. They know who I am. So when I pushed the question one step further and I asked them, would anyone I don't know ever think I'm Korean? Or could I ever become Korean to them? Could I ever be accepted by them? The answer, again, across the board was the same. Probably not. So I think the prevailing answer to the question of have I become Korean is kind of. Through acquiring the language, I have adopted new ways of thinking and more things than just words and grammar. I've changed my behavior to match the locals. Things I like to eat have changed. Things I like to do have changed. My interests have changed a lot. In a lot of ways, I feel kind of alienated from the culture that I grew up in because I've stepped outside of it for so long and in such a immersive way. I have changed because of Korean. So I think that I have become Korean to myself. Through a long period of using the language and operating socially within Korean culture, I think that it has become enough to convince myself subconsciously that I'm part of the in-group. Now, I would never say to someone, I'm Korean. To basically everyone on Earth, I'm never going to be assumed to be Korean. I don't have to ever deal with either the positive or negative effects or consequences of being Korean. But Korean people are now included in my we. They're a part of my in-group. This isn't really a train I can get off of now. I can't stop understanding Korean. I can't, undo the relationships I have that exist entirely in a Korean universe. Some of the most important relationships in my life, the most important experiences I've ever had, have happened completely in Korean. I mean, I've spent my entire adult life here. And I think that through kind of passively convincing myself subconsciously that I am part of the in-group, I've really been able to unlock my full potential to speak the Korean language authentically and to connect with other Korean speakers on a really, human level. I think the foundation of a lot of my Korean language abilities can be found in this subconscious acceptance that I'm part of the group. This is part of me. I am part of it. This is part of who I am now. I'm not totally a foreigner anymore. And that is what I want you to take away from this video. That's the lesson here. When learning any language, but especially one where your in and out group status is visual, Your identity as part of the in-group needs to start with you. Dr. Stephen Krashen, who I talk about on this channel, as much as I can, the guy who really promoted the idea of acquiring a language through comprehensible input and all that stuff, he talks about something like this in his work as well. One of his speculations is that we all have, deep down in our psyche, in our subconscious, some sort of mechanism that appears to be reminding us that we're an outsider, something that tells us that we're not part of that in-group, so don't pretend too hard. He assumes that it's maybe some sort of survival mechanism, something that, we don't get caught as being an outsider or something like that, something to avoid getting caught as an outsider. So it may be a survival strategy, but one of his ideas is that this is the reason people end up with foreign accents in another language, or at least a contributing factor to that. So I think that by starting with yourself, you can work to crush that voice, or at least, suppress it, make it quiet. Me behaving less and less like an outsider eventually led my friends and people close to me to stop thinking of me as and stop treating me as an outsider. And all of the knowledge and skills and intuition I got from all of those interactions taught me how to display to other people, hey, I'm not an outsider. I know how to speak to you. I know what's going on. I know who you are. I see you. And I can do that after people spend just, a little bit of time with me. Obviously, it doesn't happen at first glance. We gotta, communicate. But so this whole spiral of Oli London induced self-reflection was actually the origin of the idea that sits at the core of the Korean Patch project, authenticity. Authenticity requires putting in the work, being made of the right stuff, being made in the right way, and knowing what you are. Other people will too. Real recognize real, right? Put in the work, be made of the right stuff, be made in the right way, and know who you are so others can too. A public Korean identity is not something for you to take or use or whatever other weird thing you hopefully are not planning on doing with it. Those surgeries are not it, but Koreanness, or your identity as a Korean speaker, is something that you're going to need to figure out on your own for yourself on a personal level if you really want to become an authentic speaker of the language and connect with other Korean speakers. You will figure out what this means for you in time. You already have plenty of identities. I just wanted to share through this story that in my experience, if you want to speak Korean in a way that lets you connect on a deeper level with people who speak Korean, you're going to need to start from a place of love and a sense of kinship. You're going to need to understand and embrace the fact that by earnestly learning, listening, noticing, and participating, you are becoming just as much a part of Korean as it is becoming a part of you. Now, I have more thoughts on this topic. I could talk about this all day, I'm sure, but I'm going to cut it off here for today. I know that we need to treat this topic delicately. Hopefully I was delicate enough in this video, but the main reason I'm talking about this is because I think about this stuff a lot, and I would love to know what other people think. If you have any experiences like this or anything like that, please let me know. And it doesn't even have to be Korean. Do you have any experiences with immigration or assimilation, integration into a new language? Have you moved into a new language before? Has joining a new culture changed you and your identity, just on a personal level? If you have any thoughts on anything I've said or any of that kind of stuff, let me know in the comments. I will get back to you. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next one.